Hello and welcome to Gender Nebulous, episode 48. Today we have myself, Victoria Hodges, and my lovely co-host, Miss Freda Wallace.
I'm just having a cake.
Having a cake. We're in the middle of recording, and what does she do? Start stuffing her face with a cake.
A special coronation cake.
Coronation cake? I didn't get any coronation cake. Where did you get that from? Was it delivered?
Well, technically I won a hamper.
You won a hamper?
Well, it was
a coronation hamper. My deepest sympathies.
And there was a cake in the shape of a crown. Okay. But I've eaten most. There's not much crown left. It's mainly
you're
just
eating crown cake.
Yeah.
So, how's your weekend been? I know it's not over yet, but it's coronation weekend, isn't it?
I did. Do you know what? I enjoyed some of the coronations. I know I'm all like anti-monarchy and all that, but I watch it and I think I like these mad rituals. And I like reading about the history.
I did say I wasn't going to watch it, but then I thought, okay, I'll just watch the start. I'll just see what the first bit's like. And I ended up watching the whole damn thing.
But we are going to talk about the coronation a bit later, because there's part. I think it's one of the topics when I talk about. So I won't go into too much about that.
Yeah, I think it was more kind of idle curiosity than anything else.
Yeah. But I've had a bit of a weird week on Twitter because like the thing is with when I put something out there, I criticize people fairly. And I don't necessarily go in to attack people. So when somebody says something inaccurate, I just correct it, and based on what I know, and I expect somebody might say, "Well, you might be wrong there, so this is why," and then we can have a discussion. But what tends to happen is I say something and they don't like the facts of it because it destroys their argument. They don't have an argument anymore, and it takes the power out. So what they do then is they'll get a big account to retweet it, and there'll be a pile-on, and everybody's just misconstruing what you say for about 48 hours. So that can be a bit scary because you're not having a discussion anymore. You're not talking about the subject you wanted to. You've been forced to defend yourself from things that you've not really done. Now, I can be quite adversarial on Twitter. I can go for people, but the thing is with that, I just get to a point where I think this is spirals of arguments. And
this is Twitter, isn't it? It is like this most of the time with anything you say on Twitter.
But the thing is with my Twitter, Twitter's a performance thing. Like that's the way I deal with Twitter. Like it's like an art. Like I treat any of the art things that I do, like my poetry or my spoken word performances. There's an abstract part of what it's kind of not. It is me. All the opinions are my own, but I know exactly what I'm doing. When I post something, I know the effect it's going to have. When I tweet something, I think about who is this aimed at? What's the purpose of this tweet? What is the joke? A lot of my tweets are like. They're not like jokes as in the sense of like comedy, but they play on words. I always try and have a hidden kind of innuendo in there that you can read it two ways. And if you read it one way, it makes you one kind of opinion. If you read it another way, it may make you a certain kind of, put you in a certain kind of mindset. So I'm always like doing things like that. But the problem is people can copy and paste things, screenshot things and take them out of context.
Which they will do a lot, especially if you're being targeted.
So
I think, social media, I still have my account. I've said this before, but I'm not actively using it. It's not on my phone. I just use it now and again on my PC. Yeah. I'm using Mastodon more than I use Twitter these days. I'm quite interested in this new one that's coming, Blue Sky. I've got my name on the list for that.
It sounds interesting. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it.
But it's more. I think it's more like a federated site when it gets going. I mean, I've not seen it yet because I'm not in it, but I've got my name on the list. But I think it's going to be a bit more like Mastodon, where it's not nobody's in a kind of overall control, and it's got this portability feature. Where you can move your account from
that's the killer
kind of one to another and bring all your contacts with you. So I think that's a really important thing to be able to do, because you can do that within Mastodon if you change servers. I think it's like Mastodon but on a bigger scale, and you can as long as you're all using the same kind of platform, you can transfer accounts from one server to another.
The thing is though, like one of the advantages, and I don't know if it's an advantage, but being trans on Twitter, and people can tell that there's the reason people are targeting you. They might say that they're defending this or they're speaking up for this person, but when you look at the profiles, they have some very specific things in common. The hashtag is always "I stand with J.K. Rowling" and keep prisons single sex and keep men out of women's sports and things like that. So you know straight away, like, because like I had this thing of people tagging my employer, but my employer know that every time that happens now, you just have to look at the most of them are anonymous and most of them are just really angry, and it's not a complaint, it's an attack. And my initial communication that led to that was fairly reasonable. But you see, the problem I have is I just like winding people up too much, I go in for it too much, and I put myself in a vulnerable place because I know I know what I'm posting, I know what I'm doing, I know exactly what I'm doing. Nothing goes on my Twitter by accident.
I think what you should do maybe is, instead of getting into these never-ending arguments, is just post what you want to post, make sure it's understood the way you want it to be understood, and then switch off comments, leave.
The way you combat fascism is letting people tell on themselves. So I will ask them the question. Most of my tweets in replies are questions, because they'll use things like autogenophile and woman face, and I'll say, well, what does that mean? As a genuine question, what does that mean to you? Without linking me to another website, tell me what that means.
But have you ever thought about maybe just coming off for a month, just take a break and then go back?
No, I'm completely addicted to Twitter.
You're addicted, so you do admit it's an addiction.
I have Twitter intravenously injected.
I understand this because I've tried to delete it off my phone several times and then just reinstalled it. This last attempt I've done, I've managed to keep it off, and I just go in on my PC because I'm finding my life is so much calmer, so much more relaxed. I don't have to worry about what's going on in Twitter anymore because I'm not posting stuff. It's very relaxing, actually. I know it's probably not good in terms of, well, where's your activism, Vicky?
Well, no, I don't.
But it's not really activism for me. My activism is doing this podcast and doing other things that I do. Yeah. I do a lot of things outside of work, outside of this podcast. So
yeah, I do.
So that's what I do. Should we look at the news?
Yes.
Okay. So I shall
in lizard
squidge
news.
us down to our news proportions. There we go. And topic, first one, is about the
elections.
So our first story, Tories will double down on anti-trans culture war if they lose local elections, trans voters fear.
Yeah.
So we've just seen the Tories being basically...
They didn't do well,
being completely devastated in the local elections, which is a good thing. I think they lost over 1,000 councillors, and was it like 40-something councils, where Labour have gained about 30 councils and about, I think it was over 500 councillors, and the Lib Dems have made big gains too, as have the Greens. So, I mean, the Tories have lost it to all the other parties pretty much, depending on where you were. But I mean, this story, I mean, does this show that despite the fact the Tories are fighting the culture war, that it's really not making any difference to them?
I think it's a bit of a wake up call. Because I'm entrenched in this debate all the time on Twitter, and I've been on Talk TV and I've been on GB News and all that, and I sometimes feel like it's all around all the time, but it's because I'm algorithmically thrown this stuff. You know what I mean? Because your Twitter experience, etc., is kind of tailored to what you search for. But I think most people, like when I talk to my sister, when I talk to other colleagues about this, it's not even on their radar. They're voting based on their tax and their income tax and basic
gas bills,
money,
inflation, jobs.
Exactly. Because sometimes
NHS.
I've had conversations with my mum and I've had conversations with my sister where I was like, oh God, have you heard about what Kemi Badenoch is doing? And they go, what? Then they might not even know a name, and I know all these people's names because we have to kind of figure out what's going on. So oh, I say, yeah, Kemi Badenoch, come, I'll explain what she's been up to. And they just say, well, how's that going to affect anybody? And that's the reality of it.
Yeah. Let me just read a little bit out of this here story. So ahead of the local elections on Thursday, I mean, we've had the elections now, but the latest polling from Ipsos shows that 49% of the country are behind Labour, almost double the Conservatives, 26%. I think that's even less now. And the Liberal Democrats sit third with 11%, and the Green Party's in fourth. If the Tories lose, plenty of queer people will see it as a victory, but it's unlikely to change the course of the culture wars, says Charlie Hasted, chair of LGBT plus Lib Dems. Over the last couple of years, the Conservatives have repeatedly weaponised trans rights in an apparent bid to drum up support among its voters. I think that is failing because of what we just spoke about. People aren't really that focused on this issue unless, apart from a really small, hardcore minority of bigots. I think most people are more concerned about the daily cost of living and NHS and all other kinds of things.
Well, yeah, because like when I've spoke to patients when I've been at work and they don't know anything about, like, they talk to me and the word trans never crossed it. I mean, even that, like, I have conversations sometimes about being trans and it's not an issue for them. It's not like,
yeah, I mean, we've even seen that the Labour Party has shifted its position on trans rights. That Overton window thing. Keir Starmer, he's trying to move himself more and more, in line with Tory thinking. So I think he does that so that people can't see a difference between Labour and Tory, and therefore will vote Labour. On other policies. So he tries to align himself with Tory policies in an attempt to get their vote.
Yeah, but it's kind of worked.
Well, it has, but that doesn't mean. Does that mean that if it's worked, does that mean if and when he ever gets in power, he's going to move back to the left?
No, because he's gone back on the tuition fees pledge.
He's gone back on a few things, yeah.
Yeah, but I think I don't have a lot of faith in. I've seen like people who were in the Labour Party that were ousted out, with the whole anti-Semitism thing, and I think yeah, of course, like if you're gonna look at racism in political parties, you can't cherry pick. You've got to look at it all, and the Tory Party is rife with it. Islamophobia. So is Islamophobia worse than is anti-Semitism? No, but it's like what they'll try and do, because anti-Semitism is such a, it can creep in. It's kind of like the invisible demon. Do you know what I mean? And people can make mistakes and not see it. And I think if you just have, like what happened to Diane Abbott recently. And I don't think for one moment Diane Abbott is a racist or a anti-Semite. She made a mistake, okay, but we're grown-ups. We don't denigrate a whole person's character based on, because I'd be buggered, wouldn't I?
Just some of the other comments in this article. Labour is the best option for LGBT voters up and down the country, but that doesn't mean they're expecting the transphobic culture war to come to an end if they make significant gains in the local elections. Somebody's saying they imagine it will get worse regardless of which party comes out best in the local elections. The Tories are hell-bent on using trans people as pawns in their culture war, leaving our community more vulnerable than it's been in decades. It's disappointing that Labour has indulged in this and briefed against its own policy on self-ID and other measures that would make trans people's lives easier in the medium term. We're in it for a rocky few years, unfortunately, and that's down to all political parties in Britain. As for the Tories, this person agrees that they're unlikely to back away from the trans issues, even in the face of brutal local elections issues. They'll dig their heels in further on culture wars, which can only be bad news for minority groups in the UK. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
it's not going to get better anytime soon, I don't think.
I just kind of sigh whenever we talk about Labour Party now, because I had a lot of hope.
It's a massive disappointment, isn't it?
I had a bit of hope when Jeremy Corbyn was becoming popular, and there were people around him that seemed like they could. The thing is, he could have made real change, and the Tory Party and every one of their lobby group friends were so frightened that Corbyn could make gains and perhaps become Prime Minister, because they knew what a bumbling dickhead Boris was. There was a chance Boris could easily fuck that up. So they went in full. Everything that Corbyn said was analysed, regurgitated as some kind of, they were trying to link him to communism and all this and Marxism. It's like if you look at it objectively, it was a character assassination. And if you're interested in looking at that, I would recommend Alexei Sale's podcast where he interviews Jeremy Corbyn, because that is where he's honest, and that because he can speak freely. And what Jeremy Corbyn says, I actually 100% believe him, because he's got no reason to lie there.
Yeah, we've drifted a long way away from that position, haven't we?
I'm sorry, I went on a bit of a
no, I mean, not you and me. I mean, as a country, you look at the Labour Party today, it's kind of drifted to the right quite a long way.
Well, didn't you say, though, a couple of weeks ago, like the Tory party of Theresa May is now...
is more left-wing than... the Labour Party of today.
Because when you think about Theresa May was going to bring in
she was going to bring in all the changes, and now Labour don't even want to talk about that.
I think self-ID is inevitable.
That Overton window thing, we've really seen it shift to the right, haven't we? It's
and every one of these people that argues about this is, it will be proved to them. Even no matter what news stories they find about trans rapists or trans criminals, they do the risk assessment, and that is how we work things out. Like when you're you can't be. I mean, emotions do ride high in times of elections and in times when, people think of their team, don't they? When they think of a political party, it comes like that, and. So, I mean, it's hard to be...
But don't you think it's really interesting how that window has shifted, though? Because if you think about where we were a few years ago, nobody would have even thought that this country would pull out of the European Union. That was just like a wild thing that people on the right were kind of dreaming of.
I mean...
And now it's kind of like you've got people in left politics saying, "Oh, well, we're never going to go back in the EU." It's like it's shifted completely.
Yeah,
it's just not that issue either. There's loads of issues where that kind of acceptable opinion window is shifted massively to the right.
Well, we've
got to move it back to the left.
This is before I even came out as trans, and I was listening to talk radio and stuff, and I was interested because I didn't know anything about Europe or the European. Honestly, I was totally ignorant to it. I didn't know anything that was going on, and this UKIP party kept popping up in leaflets my mum was getting. And I thought, what is this? It's like the BNP, but in a sharper suit. You need to question this moment. It's not good. So when I started, and that's when I got into listening to talk TV, and at the time, it wasn't as right wing completely as it is now. They used to have quite a lot of more Labour. John Nicholson, the Scottish MP, he was on Talk TV at that time, and it's massive difference now. And Brexit caused that.
I mean, if you look at the results of the election, I mean, what seems to have happened to UKIP is that they've lost all the remaining seats they had, and I think the party that's taken over now is this Reform UK party, which
they're
is
terrible.
That under Richard Tice? Is that his
Richard
party?
Tice? Yeah, buys.
So it's gone from
UKIP
with what's his name, to Richard Tice. I mean, it's the same thing, really, just a different name.
I don't think some people don't realise like how interconnected, based on a very very small group of people, where power resides. Cause,
I mean, they didn't do very well either. So I mean, it's not.
No, I don't expect they will, because, I mean, I am still hopeful, because like when you see these polls of like when they ask people about trans issues, what they're trying to do is lobby for the change in opinion, so that when they do polls, they'll ask the question like, should trans women be allowed in female spaces? And if all you've listened to is Talk TV, and all you've listened to is GB News for a year, your opinion's going to be different than if it hadn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think the best we can hope for at the moment is that, Labour get in. The Lib Dems do better. Yeah. We ensure that Tories are out. And then once they're in, we all work to move that Overton window back to the sensible zone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if Labour's kind of pushed itself to the right just to gain votes, I'm hoping that when they're actually in power, that they realise, okay, that was a mistake. Let's go back to where we used to be. You know, move back to where they traditionally are, left to centre.
Yeah. But I
don't know. I don't know if I'm wrong there, but I think it might be easier to do that once they're in. Because then they're not worrying about, we need to be like Tories to get votes, because they're in power. They can kind of forget about that and then move back to normal, sensible policies.
The only way I vote really is based on like I look at the voting. So obviously I'm voting Labour, and I know there are Labour policies that are totally shit, and I totally disagree with them. But that is like the only option.
Yeah, but you're never going to get 100% alignment with any party in your own views, are you? There's always going to be certain things.
Yeah, I know, because then you'd have like.
So I'm not sure what you can really kind of expect in a percentage to kind of match up with a party. I mean, maybe 70% of what you think matches up with the party you want to vote for is good.
Yeah, but Vicky, when I run for local government, my policies are going to be killer, and I'm going to be like, free carpet for everyone. Everybody gets Tuesday afternoon off, and a free digibox. Do they still do them?
I'm sure. You probably get some votes.
And I buy my own TV station like Richard Tice has done, so I can filter all this bollocks from Tufton Street directly into the ear holes of arseholes, so they'll vote the way I want. All
right. Watch this space. So heading back to the coronation news.
Coronation, yeah.
Coronation Street.
It was all very weird, wasn't it?
King Charles' coronation, yeah. I mean, that was a really strange thing, wasn't it?
It didn't have a celebratory feel to me.
No, it didn't. It felt very weird.
It felt like another
He didn't look happy. Nobody was really smiling. It was all very strange and weird.
I got the impression that none of the people there wanted to be there.
No, and that weird kind of ceremony where they're doing the anointing behind the screens and giving him all the bits of metal.
Do you know what they are?
They gave him. What did they give him? They gave him the coronation ring. I don't know. There's a couple of were they bracelets or something or spurs? There were some bracelets, some spurs. Then they gave him the orb with the cross on it, like the cross of Jesus on the orb of the world. And then the two staffs, I can't remember what they're both called, but the two staffs they gave him.
Well, there's a guy on Twitter.
It's like, I'm sure all that has meaning and it's been done for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I was just going to...
But it all seems very odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a guy on Twitter that I follow called Mike Stauschbury, and he's an historian. And he was talking about, because these are occult rituals. They go back to Egyptian times.
They go back many, many years, yeah.
They go back, the idea of anointing.
But the anointing seemed to be like the most important part of the ceremony. Yeah. And the rest was just like, putting on the crown and giving him all the bits of metal with just like the symbols of having been anointed. Like, you're the anointed one, so we give you all these things.
The divine right of kings.
Yeah.
You see, what I want to do... Because before this we were talking about protesting, weren't we? So we should do something for the coronation. And what I wanted to do was get a load of drag queens together and go to London and find a park we could do it and just crown each other. And it was going to be called the Divine Right of Drag Queens. And it was just our coronation, coronating ourselves. Coronating a word? To give ourselves the crown. And because as drag queens, I mean, I'm not a drag queen. But drag queens are symbolic of, that opulence. Even though, a lot of drag queens are skint, let's face it. But they kind of, they play into that idea of the ritual of dressing up and becoming this otherworldly thing, which is what we look at when you look at kings and queens. So, and that's why they're called drag queens.
I mean, with Charles, they kind of stripped off all these layers of clothing, and he was just stood there in what looked like an old white shirt at one point.
Yeah. Oh, God,
and his shoes and his shorts, whatever it was. And then they kind of start putting all these layers of all these different robes and things on him. It was really a very bizarre thing to watch. But
let's not forget, we've not had a coronation in this country since
70 years.
And we're probably not going to get one now. Not in that way. I can't see... When Charles passes, I don't think William and Kate will want that.
No, it'll probably be reduced down to something more.
It'll be called
in line with the times.
It'll be pure coronation. A couple of cardboard crowns, a couple of solicitors will come round and sign a few documents. You sort of get
the other really interesting part of it was how it was all heavily associated with the Church of England, the Protestant faith, and all this stuff. And Jesus being the King of Kings, and he's basically anointing Prince Charles to be the King of England. And there's a lot of religious kind of connotations to it. I mean, I don't know if European royals have all that religious association when they do coronations, but I found that a bit weird. If somebody's not religious, how do you associate with the King of England, who's also the king of the religion? It's all very strange, isn't it?
Oh yeah, because the thing about this is it goes back to even if we didn't celebrate the royal family, we'd still have the aristocracy of this country.
Oh yeah,
the landed gentry that really do still control everything, and it's just wild that we live in that kind of system. But that is because of who the landowners are, and interestingly, when you look at who the landowners are, and when you look at who they're connected to, they're the people that run the British press. They're the people that want that to hold on to power.
Yeah,
and the way that they lobby for that is by influencing what stories get written, and this is how it worked. But and they were stopping, like the offices of Just Stop Oil got raided because there was a tip off that they might do a protest. And if you're going to stop people rightfully protesting, if you're going to stop people who nobody's saying they're going to go up to the king and do him any damage.
Well, there was another organisation, Republic, anti-monarchy group, aren't they?
Peter Tatchell. Yeah.
Peter Tatchell was protesting with them, but they apparently they'd got permission to do their protest. It was all organised. It was all proved. Yeah. And then on the day, the police start arresting some of their members. They put up a big screen so they couldn't be seen. Which was all against what was agreed 2 days before. Yeah. So what the police have some answers to give. Why did they do that? It was a peaceful protest. If you can't protest in this country, what the hell is going on? These are peaceful protests. They weren't doing anything other than holding up banners and chanting a few words. I mean, if you don't like what they're saying, you just ignore it and go stand somewhere else. People are allowed to protest. We're not, as far as I can see.
Because it's a slippery slope. We know that the government are trying to bring these laws in. Sorry.
Well, they've already brought one law in about protesting, haven't they?
It just makes me so mad, because if this goes forward and they say, you can't, because they were talking about what is a peaceful protest and what is a what they call it, a social, what do they call it, a disturbance.
Yeah.
Nobody can decide that.
How do you define that? What is it?
All protests start peacefully.
No, but if you're going to say you can't do things, you need to be really specific about what it is. You specifically cannot do it.
Put it this way, Vicky, right? If I wanted to stage a protest and something happened within that protest, the police could shut it down based on one person's actions.
Yeah, well, they're doing it, but they've been very wishy-washy about the definition. So it's down to the local police chief to decide what the definition is. So if he decides, okay, well, that's a disturbance, even though it's not, well, then they can arrest people based on his interpretation of the law. The fact is that it's so wishy-washy and undefined that they've left it open for that very reason, so that they can allow the police to choose what the law is, basically. So there was an interview done on Channel 4. I think it was one of the Channel 4 news people, and he was talking to the deputy chief assistant, whatever his name is. I can't remember now, but. Yeah. He was asking this point, saying, well, can you tell us what is the definition that you're using to define a disturbance? And the guy couldn't give it. He said, well, it depends on this, it depends on that. So there's no clear definition, is what he was saying. I think that's a deliberate policy that they've done that.
Yeah, I think it's all part of a wider plan to, because the thing is,
stamp out any kind of protest.
They know that people there's more and more protests springing up. We know we've had the Just Stop Oil thing, and they tried to shut down them, and then we got the trans rights protests can get really not violent. I don't think there's been anybody.
Are we becoming a dictatorship here?
But what people don't realise, when people protest trans rights, they're not just protesting for trans. It's the idea that the idea that somebody can change policy to harm people, to make somebody's life more difficult. That's what they're protesting. It's like, yeah, they're standing up, they fly the trans flag and all this, but they might fly a load of other flags. I've seen like communist flags. I've seen, Ukrainian flags at protests. There's a lot of issues come together. So you could get a big protest, and it's not just single issue. It's about justice. And within that there might be a couple of people who just daft enough to throw a brick at someone. And because of that is the only thing that will be seen on the news. And that is a real sad thing, but that's what happens, because the news don't want to talk about the debate. They want to say, look at these crazy lunatic activists, look at these crazy violent insurrectionists. That's what they want you to think.
What you end up doing is agreeing with your own removal of your own rights, don't you? You end up agreeing with the government to say, oh yeah, you can take away our right to protest because we agree with you because you told us it's wrong. I mean, that's where you're going. You're kind of sleepwalking into a dictatorship in a way.
Yeah, because it's very easy to do. People don't realise that. Like where some countries are now in Europe, like in Italy, they're very right wing. It's really simple, because fascism, like when I've used the word fascism, people say, oh, it's hyperbolic. Why are you invoking the Third Reich? I said, no, because fascism is incremental, and we notice it because we can actually feel it on the street. And I talk to a lot of people that do stuff with Black Lives Matter and do stuff with Extinction Rebellion. And that's where I get a lot of my information about Tufton Street and things like that, because the trans part is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just a bit that we notice because we're entrenched in that particular debate. And while we're actually doing that, we're not really paying... See, this is the thing, like, that's why I like mentioning Trans Safety Network a lot, because a lot of the stuff I've talked about when I've been on Talk TV has come from that website. And it's because my blog is like an opinion piece, and I am opinionated. That is just pure fact what's on that website. Doesn't care about your opinion.
The other thing that's been really interesting with this coronation is how a lot of countries that are still part of the Commonwealth seem to be now having this conversation around, do we still need to have the monarchy in our country? We've seen this from New Zealand, Australia, not so much Canada. And a lot of the Caribbean countries are having these internal debates. So, and it also ties back to colonialism, doesn't it? And the slave trade, and there seems to be a growing movement towards, we need the government to apologise for these things. We need reparations. I'm just wondering if this, now that we've got King Charles, is this opening up for all these countries to say, right, enough, let's get rid.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. Way, isn't it? I think inevitably the monarchy is going to the idea of the head of the state thing, whatever, will disappear. But the thing is, it's just like I said, all the aristocratic families that own the land that really actually do control power in this country.
Yeah, I mean, just this article in particular, it's talking about the colonial legacy. I didn't know until I'd read this article that in 1952, same year that Queen Elizabeth II acceded to the throne, British forces declared a state of emergency in Kenya. I wasn't really aware of this. At that time, Kenya was part of the British Empire, the size of which was declining as colonies began to seek independence. When the Kenyan Mau Mau movement advocated violent resistance against colonial rule, the British responded with brute force. In the years that followed, more than 20,000 Kikuya people were put in detention camps. 11,000 rebels died in the fighting. The Mau Mau rebellion is one of the most pertinent examples of the horrors people were subjected to by British colonialism.
See, I didn't even know about this.
No, I didn't. I mean, this was happening in 1952. This is after the Second World War, where we basically were fighting the Germans, and yet at the same, a few years later, this article goes on to say,
the thing is, I was taught a version of British when I was at school. I was taught a version of British history that is more or less a fiction. I mean, I remember learning about the Indian, the Raj, the British Raj in India, and it all seemed to be very nice. We went over there to educate the people, and then I learned about the Second World War. We did the Second World War at GCSE, and it was basically like just Spitfires and Churchill.
Yeah, so this Mau Mau rebellion in 1952, there's a picture here. A British policeman hold men in the village at gunpoint while their huts are searched for evidence that they participated in the in the act of rebellion in 1952. And it goes on to talk about there have been many rebellions before throughout the British Empire, but when in this they cracked down with horrific violence, the use of concentration camps, the use of counterinsurgency, trying to starve people out, arresting people, and then mass hangings and executions.
Yeah,
this is the British in 1952.
I know, it's like we don't know about. I mean, I'm sure if you were a historian and you read the books, you'd know about this. But it's like I think of myself as a fairly reasonably curious and educated person, and I didn't know about this. So, if you think about the kind of people, not to profile people, but the kind of people that read the Daily Mail, the kind of people that aren't really engaged in anything, they're not going to know about what shapes policies, or well, not policies, but like the country.
Yeah, how the British Empire kind of exported its anti-LGBT doctrine across the world.
Oh yeah, because it's colonial. Yeah. It's like when you look at African countries now that are very anti-LGBT.
There's a map. Because it comes from British showing the areas which still criminalise LGBT people, and it's basically the remnants of the British Empire.
Yeah, well, it still exists. Like you talk about the Commonwealth now, don't they? Not the British Empire. It's like when you see those pictures of, when they carry William on a throne.
It's the British Empire, which is now referred to as the Commonwealth. Yes.
It's the same thing. I think they've slimmed down a bit, and they don't.
They've gentrified it, haven't they?
They couldn't afford it. I mean, after the Second World War, we had to pay so much money to America for fighting it for us that we had to get rid of the empire. I think it was the First World War that did that.
So yeah, I'm just wondering now. We've got Charlie Boy. How long's that gonna?
I don't think he's.
I can start seeing these countries saying like, we don't need the monarchy anymore. Let's just.
You see, where the Queen was protected, like she might have said things behind closed doors that were, we'll never know, right? But there's not going to be that protection of Charles because he's going to piss people off. All
right, next one. Activist Tate Smith warns that businesses aren't thinking ahead on trans inclusion. So I think this article is about, when you're at work and you come out as a trans person, and you might be the first one to come out in that company, and then the company kind of scrambles. So, we need to.
What we're going to do with this?
We need to get some policies in place, and they give Stonewall a ring, and Stonewall says, "Oh yeah, we can help you with that policy, and here you go. Here's a template." And then they get the policy in place, and then more trans people join, and those trans people who are just recently out in the company have to spend most of their time explaining to the HR department why policy X, Y, and Z is not quite right, and you say you're not saying the right thing there, and this needs to be changed here because this, there's all little things like that where we notice as trans people that other people won't see because it doesn't affect them, or it's just like not on their radar at all.
Yeah, this is also why the TERFs hate Stonewall.
Yeah, I think what Tate Smith is saying here with this article is that, rather than waiting for people to approach HR and say, look, I'm trans and I'm going to transition, to have those policies in place ready so that they don't have to go around scrambling and not have to put all the pressure on the trans people or the other people within the LGBT community who are basically having to do the work of the HR department to get that stuff in place for when they come out.
Yeah, I'm going to say
it's like it shouldn't be down to us to put HR policy in place. The companies should be doing this proactively, having these policies in place before people, even come out. I think that's what Tate's saying. I've got to say though,
like where I work, I've been quite impressed by how they've been able to help me, and they gave me support, and the managers I closest to did understand, because we're part of a union that is part of the LGBT Foundation, the Unison. So that really helps. But what people don't understand is like when they write these policies, they're not consulting trans people a lot of the time. They're just looking at it purely from an employment law point of view. I understand why they do that, because if you look at the case of Maya Forstater, her whole case was about she wanted to express a gender critical view and she felt like she couldn't do it. Now, in that situation, anybody can talk to me about being trans. Anybody, I don't shut people. If somebody comes to me with a genuine question about my transition and it's not out of the blue and it's not rude, then I'm happy to have that conversation. They make out that there was some kind of there's a taboo about questioning our version of how we express ourselves. But you see, what people like that do is they make out that they are being shut down. Like it's almost as if that it's their view of the world that is the minority. It's not. That's excuse me. The reason those policies exist is to, like, if somebody was to genuinely sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. If somebody was to genuinely say to me, "Oh, what was it like when you came out?" And obviously that's a natural conversation to have with somebody. But if they go, "Oh, you're a man though, aren't you?" Now we know by somebody saying that it's not. It doesn't. It's coming from a sort of aggressive point of view. So if I don't want to work with that person, my employer will say, "No, you don't have to put up with that," and it's as simple as that. And
yeah, but I don't think line managers are really given much education in this, are they? They're just kind of left alone. The company may or may not have a policy, and then they may or may not have told people about it.
Yeah, but my point is, it comes down to basic social politeness. Like, you wouldn't go up to. It's like do you remember that story in the papers? There was like a charity event at Buckingham Palace. I thought it was at Buckingham Palace.
Oh yeah.
One of the ladies in waiting asked a black lady, "Where you from?"
Yeah, and then kept insisting where you're from.
But you see, that is what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. It's about the way people are not. We're all trying to do a job, and my identity has nothing to do with that job. So if I'm made to feel like unwelcome or sidelined or unincluded, then that's a problem. Not for me. It's not my problem. It's a problem for that person and the employer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Tate says in this article, I don't think they're thinking ahead. They're waiting for somebody to come out and tell them what to do, which is not good enough. Well, but many businesses are implementing small changes like encouraging correct pronoun use, gender-neutral toilets, and inclusive recruitment to support the trans community at work. There is a lot of more leaders. There's a lot more that business leaders can be doing. I'm seeing a real need for them to be educated by trans and non-binary people, but the general consensus is that they always wait for someone to come out. Smith sees the lack of progressive policy as the reason why many trans and non-binary people are not out at work. What I've found is an excuse, Smith continues. It's always used as to why they don't have a policy or why they don't cover surgery or whatever it might be. They go, well, we don't know any trans or non-binary people. So, it's like they've not put the policies in place because they've not come across anybody who needs to use them.
Yeah, I mean...
So, it's like, get them in place, talk about it in your recruitment drives, and then trans people will come along.
You're going to have to excuse me. I think I've got cake stuck in my throat.
You got cake in your throat?
Excuse me. I just needed to cough really loudly. Yeah. So, that we do need to be part of policy making, That's what I'd say.
Well, yeah, but then it shouldn't be down to us to do it. I mean, the company should have this stuff in place, and while they're doing that, they can talk to us about, is this right? Because that's the thing they don't do. They might put a policy in place, but it'll be done by the HR department under duress because they've been asked to come up with one. But whilst they're doing it, they may not go and ask the trans people who work for them, what do you think about this policy? Could you read it for us just to make sure that we're saying the right things? They don't do that bit.
No. And I think the thing is with these policies, and the reason Stonewall kind of help with those is because they do listen to trans and non-binary and all of the spectrum, LGBTQ, and it's not opinion. It's based on reality. It's based on their reality and what people are telling them. And we know that people have been sacked, and we know that people have been forced out of jobs because of their identity. That's happened. And what some people think is these policies mean they can't express their opinion. Yes, you can express your opinion. The first thing is not you're going to lose your job because if you call me a man, it just makes you look stupid. And people turn around and go, why are you calling Freda a man? And because we understand in a work situation, there's got to get on with each other. We're not there to.
Well, the employer also has a responsibility to make sure you're working in a safe, inclusive environment.
But the wider point for me is, if somebody wants to it's like you will be seen by a manager and you will have a conversation. Did you have an argument with Freda? I know she's a bit of a gobby bitch. That conversation will happen, right? And I might be asked what was said. And I said, oh, this happened. And then we might just go, shall we just forget about it? Because, we're not here to argue. And most times when meetings like that happen, that is the outcome. They don't lose their job. No matter how much Mayor Forstater might believe that happens, it definitely doesn't happen. And I can tell you, I've worked with people who definitely have a problem with me. Obviously, I can't go into detail. But all I'm going to do is remove myself from that situation. I'm not going to go chasing them and going, you're a transphobe, you need to be fired. I just don't want to be in that space with somebody who doesn't like me. Why would I? When nobody else has a problem with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if somebody is intolerant of that, the chances are they're intolerant of a lot of other things. And if you're working in a public-facing organisation where you're going to meet people in the street, in public, that are all different, whether they be trans, whether they be from other cultures, whether they be, I don't know.
But I think we need to see organisations taking the lead on this, don't we? And them being the ones that put the policies in place, making sure that they've had those appropriate conversations with, people in our community to make sure that the policies are in line with the best policies available. I mean, I think that's what's, the work that Tate's been doing, and Tate's involved in Trans in the City, and that's the bread and butter of Trans in the City. They're kind of bringing this inclusion into businesses and helping them to do that. So, yeah, we need more of it.
I think the thing is with work, people bring the political opinions into work, and I've been in the office, and somebody's brought a newspaper in, and I say, have you seen this in the paper? And I'll say, excuse me, you know why that's rubbish, don't you? Because, most of the tabloid press is rubbish. And they kind of know, and we can talk about that. But you see, the thing is, if you're trans, and there's a lot of trans news in the tabloid media, you feel like you're being talked about. And you've got to have a way of saying, look, I just don't want to talk about that. I'm not here to talk about. No,
you shouldn't have to. You don't have to respond.
Yeah. I'm really sorry about the coffee. And God, okay. It's like.
Next one. Cycling's governing body, UCI, defends trans cyclist Austin Killips' victory in women's race. So, this is the international international cycling organisation. So, Sports Cycling World Governing Body has defended a win by transgender cyclist Austin Killips by reaffirming its inclusion policy. In response to accusations that allowing trans people to take part was effectively killing off women's cycling, Union Cyclist International, UCI, said its transgender policy is based on the latest scientific knowledge. The UCI was forced to defend its policy after Killips won a stage on the tour of the Gilia women's race in New Mexico Sunday, April 30th. The win sparked a wave of anti-trans outrage from pundits, arguing that Killips' victory would amount to the eventual destruction of women's sports. Those who described the win as cyclist's Leah Thompson moment, referring to the trans US swimmer, argued that the UCI's guidelines, which state that trans women with testosterone below 2.5 nanomoles per litre permitted to compete, was not fit for purpose. So, it's the usual typical stuff that we hear about.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing I'd usually get called to go on Talk TV to talk about.
Yeah,
isn't it?
And then it's interesting that the UK organisation have actually, that they've put in place they've temporarily suspended trans women from elite female competition, pending some kind of review.
Yeah, but, I mean, the thing is with this, it's like whenever there's a story like this, it's all about making out that trans women are taking over something. And if you want to learn about this, I recommend Kirsty Miller.
Kirsty Miller, yeah, she's expert on this
Vicky,
stuff.
I'm really sorry you're going to have to talk for a minute because I'm going to turn my mic down so I can have a cough.
All right, so the report from the Canadian Centre of Ethics in Sport revealed that the male puberty shows little evidence of producing an inherent competitive advantage. Research suggests factors such as nutrition, training and exercise can have more of an effect than testosterone. There is not one discrete biomarker that allows easy comparison of athletes' bodies to each other in terms of performance, the report reads. So, it should be based on the science. I think I agree with that. And let's keep the science up to date. Let's do the research that needs to be done, and and at the same time be as inclusive as possible. That's what I would say.
Yeah,
I think you agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about these kind of things, and I think whenever there's a story like this, I'm sick of having the same argument with the same people.
It's the same. It keeps popping up. It's just spreading through all different sports at the moment.
Why do we have
to see the UCI, though, coming out with a positive statement?
Yeah, that's the main thing about this. I mean, that's the story, isn't it? But I know that kind of story would be taken up by, typical...
Sharon Davis will be all over it.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what she's paid to do. But she doesn't deal in facts. She just deals this in this emotional argument that women's sports are being damaged by trans women. And... if you eliminated all trans women from every sport ain't going to get any fairer. There's a lot of reasons why...
You'd hardly notice, to be honest, because there's not many trans women in sport.
No, because that's why they cling to the ones that are, because, Leah Thomas, the only reason we've heard of Leah Thomas is because of this. And it's, why are we focusing on trans women when you should be talking about celebrating women?
Yeah, exactly.
Why isn't Sharon Davis celebrating female athletes? She's not talking about any female athletes. She's not interested in that. She's just talking about and drawing attention to things that don't really... I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I think I'm getting ill.
You're getting ill?
Yeah. Oh, God. Been snogging dirty men.
Our next story, talking about dirty men. Artwork of Jesus... surrounded by hot leather daddies in EU exhibition they've put ring-wing bigots. I think what they mean is right-wing bigots.
Yeah.
Ring-wing. I've never heard of that phrase.
Ring-wing
bigots. So there's the image.
Chicken wing bigots.
The European Jesus with the...
you see, I love this. Because if you think about the image of Jesus, it is a sexual image. I mean, I don't mean like it's pornography, but there is that S&M, like the whole idea of submission, domination, enlightenment through suffering, endurance and pain. It comes out of all those images of Jesus being whipped.
So this is a lesbian photographer, the artist, Elizabeth Holson, known for reflecting visual minorities in her photos. It is a photo, isn't it? It's not a... Yeah.
It looks like a performance photograph where they act out the have you heard of Dave? Not Dave. What's he called now? I'll think about it. Go on, keep talking. I'll think about it.
The artwork depicting Jesus surrounded by leather-clad muscle daddies, displayed in a corridor of the European Parliament building, has sent right-wing EU officials into a red-faced rage. It's been branded vulgar, disrespectful and blasphemous by right-wing politicians from Italy and Poland, with one describing Jesus' stern-looking pals as sadomasochistic slaves. The artist says the work depicts Jesus loving LGBTQ plus rights. The image by Swedish lesbian photographer Elizabeth Olsen being displayed in a side corridor of the building in Brussels as part of the cultural exhibition hosted by left-wing politicians from across Europe. Threats to close down the exhibition or remove photos deemed controversial have been made, Olsen revealed on Instagram on Wednesday.
Yeah, I love it.
It's the usual, right-wing bigots are raging.
I was going to say the artist that it reminded me of was Dave LaChapelle, and he does those kind of staged, like he'll get a whole cast of people to, enact and then do the photographs from that. And I love. I mean, the image of Jesus is powerful because it's an archetype, and people already bring their prejudices when they look at something like that. So that is what is worth. Because it's like what I was saying about, when I tweet something, when I put something out there, I know it's working on a I'm not just posting it randomly. It's like there's a message to it. Like, when I post like slightly erotic images, and I know exactly what the thing I'm leaning into is. So like when artists do things like this, they know the iconography, they know the history of those images. And like with the leather daddies and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at, have you heard of the artist El Greco?
No.
And his images are like this because they have like sinewy flesh and muscly bodies, and they're like painted really lyrically. And this is what this reminds me of. So I expect this artist, Elizabeth Holson, is it?
Yeah.
She will have looked at those images, because if you see the way Jesus is posing there, it's exactly the same as in El Greco, in the Michelangelo. And that's what it's playing into.
There's nothing obscene in those pictures. It's just
but that's what it's doing. You see, that's what I have been doing, because people will tell on themselves when they look at something like that.
It will unveil their inner thoughts.
Yeah, because they'll say, "Well, this is
pornographic."
Because if you look at an image and you see pornography,
where there is none.
No, there could be, but it doesn't mean if you think pornography and then see that in your mind, that's because you're being turned on by it, not because of anything else.
So the artist, the exhibition is in the European Parliament in Brussels from May 2nd to 5th. Should you want to go and see it?
No. There's another thing I wanted to add to that, because when I say
the artist herself has said, the people complaining about it just need to get over themselves. It's just there for a couple of days, so just enjoy the picture. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying, when I said people look at an image and if they're turned on by it, but that repulsion as well is a powerful thing. Like, there's sometimes the way people look at trans women, and I know that people who are really, anti-trans, they'll look at kind of sexualized images of trans people, and it's completely repulsive to them. And that is the same energy at work that works in pornography, because if you look at it in a way, like a lot of pornography is, it's kind of,
it makes you wonder what kind of image of Jesus like that would the right-wing people approve of? Would they rather see, all the Republicans standing around him or something? Is that what they want?
Yeah, that's what they want.
They want like Rhonda DeSantis standing there and.
But you see, this is why trans images are used a lot in culture, because. And it's not just a new thing. Like if you look at the Greek sculptures, a lot of them had female torsos with quite large penises, and they were playing with the idea of incongruence, because it makes you think about something else. The idea of the hermaphrodite, the idea of Aphrodite, it could be a man. Because they didn't obviously back then there was no codified way of like scientific way of looking at. They just knew that existed in the mind, so that was kind of pure. So so they couldn't do anything to their bodies, they couldn't have any surgeries, but they made sculptures that represented something that was in the mind already, and that gender incongruence existed in the minds of the Greeks, and it exists throughout all art. You see that. Because when you look at images of Jesus, actually, a lot of them, he does look like a slightly effeminate man or a boy. And so the idea of the long hair and a kind of soft flesh, a very soft kind of what would you call it? Soulful look that he has. That's a very, it messes with the idea of gender a bit. You can tell I've read a bit of art history, can't you?
Okay, should we move on?
No, no, because
anything else? There
is something I wanted to add to that actually, because when I was on Talk TV and somebody noticed a book in the back of on my shelf, and one of those books is Eric Stanton, and they were said, "Oh, look, see evidence. This person is a pervert because in this Eric Stanton book, it's full of actually, Eric Stanton, what he drew and what he painted was powerful women dominating weak men. That's what he mainly drew, and the way he draws them in such a beautiful way, it's like it reminds me of that kind of, because he's putting things together that, because your eye's like, oh my God, your eye looks at it and goes, that's beautiful. Actually, what am I looking at? It's a massive woman with huge knockers slapping a little man, and that's but the way it's painted and drawn is beautiful. So, if you want to look up Eric Stanton.
Okay.
But there is some problems with Eric Stanton because if you think about like the culture he lived in, there were like, it was like the beginnings of pornography, because before film, it was all kind of drawn. Like most pornography was, or what we consider pornography was, an illustration. It was only in the later, like mid-century, that video, and then photography. Obviously, there was photography, but it was still like, if you look at those magazines from the 50s and 60s, most of what we call porn is illustrated, because for one thing, they couldn't get women to do it, and some of the fantasies they had were kind of like questionable. So that's why. On that note.
Okay, so we seem to be having a lot of stories about right-wing bigots.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is no different.
We love to take them down.
So the next one, this is about Butch females. Butch female bikers protect drag queen story hour from right-wing bigots. This was an interesting one. It's based in Canada. I'll just read out a bit of the story here. A Butch motorbike group has explained proudly why it took a stand to defend a family-friendly drag queen storytime event in Ontario, Canada. Members of the Wind Sisters biker group stood outside Middlesex County Library in Park Hill, Ontario on Saturday 29th of April to defend drag queens and attending families from the inevitable anti-LGBTQ plus backlash. Family members had to be escorted into the library by community organisers due to the dozens of anti-drag protesters attempting to block the library entrance. During the event, members of the women's motorbike group reportedly linked arms to prevent protesters from entering the premises. Historically, a Butch like myself and I've been one for 50 years now, our role in the community has always been one of the great protectors, Wind Sisters member Patricia Ginn told CTV News. So I thought this was a really interesting one. I mean, first of all, it shows that Canada's having these problems too. I didn't realise it was going on in Canada as much as that.
No, it's everywhere.
Yeah, but this kind of made me start to think about, well, could trans women do this?
Yeah.
Could trans women form a biker group and then use that group as a way of protecting the community? Could we do that? Would we be criticised for such a thing?
Well, we'd be criticised no matter what we do.
We criticise whatever we do. We criticise for breathing most of the time.
Well, I did have this idea. When I was talking about,
because I'm just thinking, you've got Butch lesbians doing something. So why couldn't we have, trans women doing something?
Yeah, but I had this idea. I did have this idea because there is a few LGBTQ biker groups, like men mainly. And I thought that'd be great to protest something like Kelly J. Keane, because it's so loud, the engine noise, and it's like it's a massive show of solidarity, and well, because bikers are associated with kind of outlaws, aren't they? And it's got that kind of sexiness to it.
Yeah.
It's really sexy. And I thought about it, but I thought that, see, whenever I think about these things, I don't want to actually draw attention to, but then again, we have to do something, don't we? We can't sit idly by. And I think
I was kind of playing with the idea. Okay, you've got a Butch motorbike group here, Butch lesbians, who don't seem to get any criticism for doing this. Can transgender women do a similar thing? Would we be accused of playing into some kind of hands of the turfs if we did this thing? If we were to do something like this, would they say, "Oh, look, they are men. Look, they're on motorbikes"? Would they do that? Because you can't say that about Butch lesbians, can you? So why? How can you say it about transgender women?
Well, the thing is though, like, I think we said about this before, like if you start going in that direction, it can be a bit, because I think about people on an individual basis, because just because somebody is, I know we can talk about averages and stuff like that.
Didn't you mention there's a group in Manchester that walk around doing protection?
The Village Angels.
Yeah, the Village Angels.
They're not like a biker kind of.
No, they're not. I know, but.
They give out condoms and they give.
They're like that unit that used to be in New York on the subways, aren't they? Used to wear the red,
I remember because I know one of the guys that does it, and because I met him on Canal Street, and I was like, oh, because it looked really impressive, like what they were doing. I said, oh, what's it about? They said, we just give out sexual advice. And so, can I have some sexual advice? I was like rubbing my legs. No, because they're just like what it is, like, because I think. It's hard to, they're not like a sort of community police or anything like that.
No.
You know what I mean? They don't have any kind of.
No, but they're there. They're there if somebody wants.
Yeah, because say if somebody collapses outside a club, or they've just had a few too many drinks and they look a bit vulnerable. Like this, I know there's been girls sat outside bars on their own, like with their shoes in their hand and a kebab in the other, going, "Becky, are you calling me an Uber?" And then they'll just go up and help them up and put them in somewhere safe. And that's all it is. It's really cool that they do that. Because I've been that girl.
So are you in favour of us setting up a transgender biker group?
I think we should start
and use it as a protection force.
See, there's two things about this. I want to do it on electric bikes.
Electric bikes, yeah, I agree with that.
But then you eliminate the power of the sound, you see.
Well, you can still have the sound. It just comes out of a speaker instead of the exhaust pipe.
Yeah, I think it would be effective. Yeah, I think it would. But I don't.
Because trans women are always told, "Oh, you're dangerous. You're the dangerous person here. We have to fear you because you're going to do this, and that to us." But if we're set up as, oh look, well, we're actually the group of people who are going to protect you, doesn't that change the argument? Doesn't that neutralise the argument that we're dangerous?
The argument's nonsense anyway, isn't it?
Well, it is. But this really kind of appealed to me, this Butch motorbike group, because here's a bunch of women who are protecting people, and trans women can do this.
I've just realised something that you made me think about something, because when I've been out in the village in Manchester on a Friday or Saturday night, you do see girls who get, I mean, obviously men as well, but sometimes when girls are drunk, they are a bit more vulnerable, aren't they? And I've been there, like, because women, what tends to happen is because we share the spaces and we look out for each other, whether we're trans or not, because you're sharing spaces with cis women who are quite pissed sometimes on
vulnerable people.
And I think if you sometimes see a girl and you can hear her being sick in the next cubicle, and I'm like, "Are you all right there, babe? Do you need something?" And it doesn't matter. Nobody gives a fuck about anybody being trans or cis, because there's a lot more problems out there.
Yeah, but you see, I mean, you're first aid trained, aren't you? Because of what you do. So there's things that all of us have kind of different skills, don't we? I mean, why can't we use those in a positive way? Within our community, we're always, the thing is, we're always portrayed negatively. And maybe there's something that we can use that's common to us all, and we can use it positively.
We shouldn't have to say that. I
know we shouldn't. But I'm not trying to justify us or anything. But I'm saying,
yeah.
You know, is there not an opportunity there for us to do something like form a motorbike group and be a protection force? Is that? Am I off the scale here or something? Or
no. I'm just looking now at biker groups.
Trying to understand. I mean, it sounds.
Yeah, there is a few LGBT biker groups actually. I'm just seeing them now, mainly gay men. And I think if we, because interestingly, I did used to ride motorbike. I lived on the Isle of Man for a year. And my brother-in-law used to work for the TT. He used to occasionally, like he was a volunteer, and he used to work with the bikes, you know, doing the mechanicking. And I've been round the TT course on a Ducati. A Ducati 916. I've done 120 mile an hour down the it's called what's it called? Wait, it's on the mountain road. Just coming off the mountain, there's this stretch of road called Krok-Nevody, and it's like an almost straight piece of road that goes straight down to the bottom of this hill. And on the TT track, I think speeds have been recorded at 160 there, and I've actually done that. So just wait to throw that in. But
sign you up then.
I'd have to relearn. I know, but we could hire bikes for the day, couldn't we?
Electric ones. We could have electric Harleys. How about that?
You see, it's going to be an expensive project, this, because if we don't already have the bikes in place and we don't already have the leathers,
well, you know, there are other expensive hobbies that we could give up and we could do this instead. You know,
what are they?
I don't know, but you know, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it feels like I quite like this idea. I think
here's the question.
It feels like a winner.
Here's the question: how many people becomes a gang? Because is 3 people a biker gang?
Yeah, biker gang of 3. Gang of 3.
Yeah, so we need 2.
I think you need at least 3. You need 3.
How much would it cost?
Because 2's just a couple. 3's a gang.
How much would it cost to hire a bike?
I don't know.
Or do they even hire bikes?
Buy one.
So it's a very big
insurance.
Well,
if you've never ridden a bike, you have to go and get your license first.
Yeah, you see, it's
then
not.
Then you've got to get your bike. It's a few grand.
It might be better
then you got to form
if
your club.
We found the people that already.
Oh, if we could join an existing club. We could join this club, couldn't we? The Butch Female Bikers Club. We could join that one.
They're all the way over in. Where are they based?
Canada.
Yeah.
There must be an English version of it. It's got to be a British version of that.
Well, no, I just googled. There are some British gay men's biker group.
No, what about Butch Female Bikers Group?
Well, there was a gay pride on the Isle of Man a couple of years ago, but the lobby groups put an end to it by making up stories. And that's true.
Anyway,
actually, I'll get into that another time.
I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. That's all.
Yeah, I like the idea. It's just the logistics of it.
The logistics may be troublesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how we're going to link this to the next story, but the next story is about a penis-shaped iceberg seen floating past a town named Dildo. The jokes are so bad, they're good.
I thought this was made up.
Well, I thought it was made up, and it's not. It's true. If it was April the 1st, I would definitely think it was made up. So a giant-sized penis-shaped iceberg has gone viral. I'm not sure if the penis has gone viral, but the giant penis-shaped story has gone viral.
Let's not link the words penis and viral.
The penis has gone viral after being photographed floating past the town of Dildo. The irony is not lost, is it? In Canada. The huge iceberg was spotted by Canadian photographer Ken Pretty near the town of Dildo in Newfoundland and Labrador, with local residents dubbing it the Dickieberg. Dickieberg.
Yeah, I just think, if this is this the kind of thing. Is this the dick that sunk the Titanic?
Well, it could have been its cousin.
Because you know about my film idea, don't you? I've had this idea to write a script for a film where the Titanic doesn't hit an iceberg, it gets to New York and everybody has a nice time. I mentioned this on the last
one.
I am writing it, but one of the scenes in it is somebody goes to the bar and there's like a bit of a build up with the music and the barman goes, "Would you like ice with that?" And then because you're expecting then for it to hit the iceberg. but you just put some ice in a glass of scotch and everybody has a nice time.
Everybody has a nice time. So, looking from the land, it was quite clear, but it wasn't quite clear. But once I got the drone out there, it was unreal how much it looked like. Well, you know, said Petty. People don't believe it's real. They think it's photoshopped. I can tell you it's real. Petty's photos attract several witty comments, including, unusually it's smaller than this when it's cold. It's just average size, and other commenters say.
Do you know with icebergs? I didn't know this, but you know the bit of the iceberg you see?
Yeah. That's only like the tip of the iceberg.
Oh my God, I've just realised the tip
of the iceberg.
Oh God, it's so thick, Freda.
So I'm going to bring into view some of the other pictures that show that it's a real iceberg. There we go.
It looks beautiful. Have you seen that video? There's a video of a pleasure.
It's just bizarre how it's kind of formed like that, isn't it?
There's a video of a day trip boat, and they go looking at icebergs, and one of the icebergs tips over because they're huge, and there's like this tsunami wave comes towards them, and everybody on the boat, they're all safe. Nobody was drowned or anything. But you see this wave, and the whole boat goes like side to side because of the iceberg turning over. Because when they melting, they balance. They can flip. The center of gravity changes.
Yeah. Pretty dangerous to be near them, actually.
I've never seen one in real life. I'd love to see one.
You wouldn't be crushed by a giant ice penis, would you? That would be.
I don't mind.
A bit of a way to go.
I mean, how long? If you had a penis, if I had a penis,
excuse me.
If I had an ice penis, how long would it take to melt?
Depends how hot it was.
Or I'm talking about. I don't think I can go into the details of what I'm trying to describe.
I mean, the thing that melts ice is heat, isn't it? So there's your answer.
Yeah, and my ass is hot. Let's face it.
There is no response to that comment.
And my friend Jo, she's got a glass dildo. It looks like ice. It's like perfectly see-through.
Okay, can I just make a point? Because we're talking about an ice-shaped penis doesn't mean that we can move on to dildos in general.
All right, because I was hoping that Ann Summers would be able to sponsor us.
Ann Summers will sponsor us with
love honey.
Penis-shaped dildos. Okay.
What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to promote the podcast, get us up to a few hundred views, and then just approach people. Say, look, if you want to send us some freebies, and before we know it, I'll be like Dylan Mulvaney. I'll be advertising Nike. That's the plan.
Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, that's the plan. Okay. I've got ambitions, Vicky.
Okay.
God, stop.
Okay.
Stop. Stop putting a damper on my ambitions.
No. Would I do such a thing?
No, what you're actually saying is be realistic.
Yes. I will now transform us back to our large normal selves. There we go.
Yeah. So.
Ta-da. I mean that's it for topics today.
I just say it's been a mad week of events, hasn't it? With the coronation, is it in Eurovision? Was that
Eurovision? I think there's some events going on during the week for Eurovision, like the semi-finals.
Yeah,
and then the real thing is on. Well, the real thing, the final is on Saturday, isn't it? Next week.
Yeah. What we need, though, I'm looking forward to Pride coming up because it winds up transphobes. Because they call it Pride Month now, but. The first Prides.
Well,
the first Pride event.
Pretty much all summer. There was one in Blackpool in winter, and it's kind of all year round now.
Yeah, because we just want to turn the whole world queer, really. But that's the mission. But what I'm saying is, Pride events start happening in May, don't they?
There's all kinds of events. I think pretty much any month of the year you'll find an event.
I'm doing Stockport Pride.
Stockport Pride.
Yeah. And I'm doing Levenshulme Pride, and I'm doing Bolton Pride, and I'm doing Manchester Pride.
Wow.
But I'm going to be so proud.
You'll be really proud after doing 3
I'll be
prides.
so rainbowed. And
I'm going to Chippenham Pride.
Because I really need trans joy and trans celebration, because I feel like I've spent a couple of years just trying to work it all out. And now I kind of feel a bit more secure in my body, and I'm much more happy. You know what I mean? Because I feel like obviously my recent operation made a big difference how I feel.
So I did a couple of Scottish Prides last year. This year I'm going to do Chippenham Pride because it's got that.
When you said Chippenham Pride, I thought you were kind of joking.
No, it's got Trans Inner City are doing an event at
I need
Pride.
to, I need to.
So I'm going to go down to that. I was going to go to Brighton Trans Pride, but I can't because I've got to go to
Brighton's always
a wedding.
Good, isn't it? I've never actually been to Brighton, but when I've seen the photos of Brighton Pride, it always looks amazing.
I'm going on a hen night. I'm going on a hen night a hen weekend in Liverpool that weekend, so I can't go.
Well, we'll go to a few Pride. Oh, and we've also
probably do the Manchester
Trans Pride
Sparkle.
Yeah, I just call it Manchester Trans Pride. I think they should drop the Sparkle.
They should, yeah.
Thing.
Just call it Trans Pride Manchester.
I might put that to them because I've got. I don't know.
I think the organisation's called Sparkle, though, isn't it? That runs it. So,
but if they call it Trans Pride, that gives it more. People know what it's about.
Yeah, that's true. A new name, probably a good idea. What else? I think that's it.
I think that's been some interesting topics there. We went all the way from lesbian bikers to icy dildos.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was an icy iceberg that floated past the town of Dildo, so it's not quite a dildo. Okay, just got you on a technical point now.
Okay, yeah, but I was trying to make a joke. Haha. So yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, so everything is tickety boo.
Everything is tickety boo. Yes, indeed. And we will be back to torture you once more on Thursday live, won't we?
And if you enjoyed the podcast and me wittering on and Vicky droning on, then don't forget to subscribe.
You were doing the droning. I was doing the intelligent.
You're going to do some droning now because we're going to try and do the song.
Oh God! Again, I thought we'd cracked the song and we weren't going to do it again.
No, we've got to do it because I want to get it right for the 50th episode, which isn't very long off.
No,
I think is the 50th one going to be a live one?
It might be next Sunday because if we do Thursday live, the 50th will be next Sunday, won't it?
I do want to do it live.
Maybe we could do a live Sunday.
No, I really want to do the 50th episode live. So, are you ready for the song? Because we've got to get the song right for the 50th episode. We've been doing it 50 times. Not that we've done it 50 times, but it feels like it. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe. That was terrible. I think that's the worst one yet.
You're rubbish.
I'm classically trained.
Classically trained in what?
Listen,
obviously not singing.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Oh, God.
Okay,
on that note,
for now. On that bum
bye
note.
For now. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to tell your neighbours. And we'll be back on Thursday to torture you once more. Bye.